Hi, everyone. As Jake said, I'm Rohin, and I'm going to be presenting a career workshop from 80,000 Hours. So, when you hear me saying these things, don't think I'm a college student. Imagine me as a sort of like real adult, who's like done research and like has a job in the real world and actually is qualified to say these things. All right, so picture that. All right. And so 80,000 Hours is a nonprofit organization. Their name comes from the fact that you work about 80,000 hours in your career. So it's a really big deal and really important decision. You want to do it well. And so they are looking for the careers and causes where you can make the most difference. Okay. So, my discussion slides are not very gray. That's so sad. Okay. Well, this is going to be a workshop. You're going to be talking a lot to the people next to you, so let's start doing that right now. So we've got a set of icebreakers here, and so what was your favorite talk in the conference so far? You can't answer this one despite my amazing joke in the beginning. And what do you think of effective altruism so far? Right? Introduce yourself to your neighbor, become best friends with them. You're going to be talking with them for a long time. Wow, you guys are great. That was the fastest it's ever gone. And I've taught 6 times, and none of my students were ever that good. But yeah, normally I'd ask you to I'd ask for some volunteer answers, but I think we can skip that for this one and go into the meat of the talk. So what this talk is about. There's 80,000 Hours has a website. It's incredibly detailed, has a lot of great research. And things you can find there are what sort of job you should look for, how you look for that job, and sort of how you can make a decision about that, and many more things. Right? We only have 100 minutes, or 95 minutes actually. I say only because even though it's 95 minutes, like a full career workshop, typically takes 4 hours and still doesn't go into all of the topics. And so I'm just going to focus on that one, what sort of job you should look for, and not talk so much about the how. You can look for more details on 80,000 Hours website. All right, so let's talk a bit about job satisfaction. Right? 80,000 Hours did a bunch of research into this and looked for the 6 key predictors of job satisfaction, and here they are. Firstly is it has to be engaging work, not sort of menial or repetitive work. It should engage you. Use some of your amazing brain power. Work that helps others, because that's pretty fulfilling to know that you're having an impact on somebody else's life. Being good at your job, hopefully that's self-explanatory. Getting on with your colleagues. Again, I actually didn't realize that this would be such a key predictor, but then again, it kind of makes sense. You're spending 8 hours every day with them. You probably want that to be fun. Basic needs, things like fair pay and reasonable hours. I'm sure everyone knows this already. And the fit with the rest of your life. So if you need flexible hours, it has flexible hours and things like that. And again, I only have 95 minutes. And the last 4 are sort of they're once I've told you that these are important things, you can sort of figure out how, you can tell whether or not you're good at your job. You can tell whether or not you're getting on with your colleagues. And I don't really have any generic advice to give you about that, apart from think about them and make sure that they're satisfied. So I'm only going to be focusing on sort of work that helps others, and to a lesser extent, finding engaging work. Okay, and so to motivate this a bit more, I want to ask, consider your average Berkeley graduate, and let's call her Eve. How much do you think Eve makes on a global scale? Is she part of the global 50%, meaning that she makes more than 50% of other people in the world? Who thinks she's part of the global 50%? All right, most everybody. How about 20%? Still a lot of people. 10%? 5%? 1%? 0.5%. Okay, all right. So you guys are very well calibrated. She is in fact part of the 1%. And this is with a salary of $55,000, which may not seem like that much, but it does put her in the global 1%. But wait, you say, Eve probably has millions of student loans. Okay, we said Eve was an average Berkeley graduate. I found statistics for the average graduate. Presumably Berkeley is probably lower because it's a state, well, I don't know. But average graduate pays about $10,000 a year in student loans after graduating. So that brings her salary down to $45,000. And now you say, oh, 55 and 45, that's a big difference. She's probably not in the 10%. No, she's in the global 2%. But yeah, so like really, I'd like to impress upon you like what a position of power all of us are in. Like, you know, we are the top 1% globally. It's kind of crazy. And we have the power to change the lives of people. We have the power to change the lives of other people, other beings. And you know, it's also incredibly fulfilling to do so. Right? Okay, so this motivates our question, which is, how can we use our career to have a larger social impact with high probability? All right. And I'm sure you've seen this image several times in this conference by now. We want to be these guys, the ones who impact all of these people, as opposed to the person who just impacts one person, but it's face-to-face. And so we're like, both of these will give you sort of warm feelings of empathy and emotion, but really we should try to aim for that. Okay. And so, this question basically says, we want to do the most good. And, isn't that obvious? Like, obviously people are already thinking about this. And I think this is like pretty apt. Everything is obvious once you know the answer. But finding that answer, no, it's pretty hard. Yeah, anyway. Okay, so let me clarify what I mean by social impact here. As with most of the talks in this conference, when I talk about social impact, what I mean is helping a lot of sentient beings and helping them a lot, right? And there are plenty of other things you could do, and a lot of this career workshop, although not all of it, will be applicable to things like this. So, for example, biodiversity or art. If those are things you inherently care about, a lot of this advice still applies, although not all of it. Yeah. Okay, so we have 6 habits of ineffective altruists, or even just 6 habits of ineffective career seekers, or something like that. So you choose a major just based on your passion. And this, I think, was one of the most interesting things I heard from 80,000 hours, which is don't follow your passion. And I'll get a bit more into why that is a little bit later. Neglect to develop practical skills, just sort of say, oh, I like music, just like the 90% of other people who like music. Maybe I should do music, right? It's definitely good for some people, like if you're willing to put in a ton of work. But if all the 90% of people who like music try to do music, 90% of that 90% are just not going to get a job, and that would be bad. Luckily, that's not what actually happens, but it still happens on a small scale, which is why this is there. Not experimenting to find a good fit. Like, it's kind of weird how we're expected to just choose a career and then stick with it. It's like, why? Like, why are we expected to, like, as soon as we find a career, just automatically like it? Like, this doesn't happen for other things. Like, we don't just choose a single restaurant and then go to that restaurant forevermore. That would be crazy. They drift into a random popular cause. So like, my friends like this. My friends are working on this. So I should probably do that too. But maybe you're missing out on other opportunities that could be more impactful. They don't investigate what works or doesn't. So this is sort of the focus on evidence that I'm sure you guys have seen before in other talks. And they aim to help directly and neglect alternatives. So, for example, one of the most interesting things, like sort of intellectually interesting things from 80,000 hours was like, you know, if you become a personal assistant to the best cancer researcher, you're letting them do more cancer research by doing sort of the drudge work that they don't, and that they no longer have to do. And so in some sense, you are actually doing, you know, cancer research, or you are having an impact of doing the best cancer research. So like being a personal assistant to some like really high impact individual, that can also be a lot, like a huge impact, even though it doesn't sound like much to say that I'm being a personal assistant. Of course, that might not be fulfilling for other reasons, but you know, it's an interesting idea to think about at least. And there are other alternatives that you could consider. Okay, so corresponding to those 6 habits of ineffective altruists, there are a few pieces of advice that 80,000 hours will give. So here's the first one. It's get career capital, get skills. And what I mean by career capital is skills, contacts, so people who will vouch for you, character, and credentials, things that say, you know, I can do this. And the idea is by getting all of this career capital, you can make a bigger difference later. Like, if you look at the most impactful people in history, their impact comes later in life when they've sort of built up all of this career capital. People actually listen to them. They have more experience and more knowledge on how to best impact the world. And so one of the best things you can do when you're young is to actually just sort of build this up and try to have a proportionally bigger impact later in life. And 80,000 hours says that in their experience, people in their 20s just don't put enough weight on this and tend to try to go for making an impact immediately at the cost of what they can do later in life. Also, some nonprofits actually suggest that people coming out of college go into the for-profit world first, work there for a few years, and then transfer back into the nonprofit world, even if what they want to do with their life is nonprofits, just because it helps them build up career capital and skills, I think, in particular. So here are some skills that are in demand according to 80,000 hours. I have limited time. I'm not going to talk about them. There is an 80,000 hours web page that describes all of them. I'll stop talking for a minute so that you can look at that. OK. And so here are the possible things that you could do to build your skills. One is to work at a firm that has a reputation for performance and mentoring. Yeah, I think that's all I'll say about that. You could become a grad student. That's what I'm doing. Not because of 80,000 hours, but that's what I'm doing in like econ, comp sci, applied math, physics, engineering, business. These are pretty STEM fields. I guess the reasons are probably too complicated to go into as to why it's these fields, but again, you can look this up on 80,000 hours. Learn some transferable skills that are in demand everywhere. The biggest example of this is programming has become like a really hot skill in the last, I guess, decade. Data science is another one, marketing. You could just start an organization. You learn a ton from starting an organization, even if it fails. And so that's worthwhile. You know, I lead a club at UC Berkeley. That has taught me a ton about sort of what we would normally call soft skills, but that I think are honestly much harder than the hard skills. So yeah, specifically yelling at people. You have to yell at people a lot. Yeah. And last one is work with a great mentor. And you know, I think I undervalued this when I was an undergrad. Like mentors, they're very useful. They can help you avoid the mistakes that they made when they were students. And I've had like many people come up to me and just say, that is probably, well, I've had one person who saw this presentation and said, that is the best piece of advice. And then I've had other people who've said, yeah, you should have probably gotten a mentor. Oh well. OK, So interactive part. What do you think you could do to build your career capital? Go. All right. So one thing that I should have mentioned before, forgot to mention, I really want this to be like a practical workshop. So you should be coming up with ideas that, these are changes that you can make in your life right now, ideally. And, in that sort of vein, it would be great if you could write these down on a piece of paper or on your laptop, your phone. I'm sure you have at least one of those. Use the back of the program if you want. But yeah, so can I get some volunteers for ideas? Yeah.
So I work at a really small startup and haven't identified someone who I want to be a mentor within my tiny organization. So this quarter I'm trying to really actively seek out people who work in my same field in other organizations to see what I can help them next year.
Nice. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Anyone else? Yeah.
Maybe for students taking a data science course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Data Science 8, actually, at Berkeley, if you're a Berkeley student. It's a great course. Great professor, so I assume it's a great course. Came too late for me to take it, sadly. Yeah. OK. So related to that, there's also the idea of the things that you're doing right now take time away from things that you could be doing, ways that you could be building career capital. So now I want you to think about what's an activity you should probably stop that you're currently doing. And it's worth noting, by this I do not mean that you should stop doing the things that you're enjoying. It's more like, give me an activity where it's the fun that this gives me or the valuable skills that this gives me, really not that important, just shouldn't really do it. And I should just replace it with something else. All right, so for me, as a teenager, I was, I read the same books over and over again. In my defense, it was fun the 20th time, but not that fun also. So really I should have just done something else. At age 15, I played the piano, ostensibly because I had a creativity requirement in high school, but I should have found something better than playing the piano because I just stopped right after high school. I knew I would stop right after high school, and yeah, it's just not benefited me at all, and I didn't enjoy it while I was doing it. At age 18, I was, in college. I was very gung-ho about, getting extra credit. It probably the extra credit I've gotten has never affected my grade in any class whatsoever. Yet I did it, even though I didn't enjoy the work, and it probably didn't help me learn. Probably not a good idea in hindsight. Age 20. I was like, yeah, senior year, got to do all the things. And so people would say, do you want to do this? I'm like, yes. Do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to do this? Oh, no, I have to teach. So the only times I would say no is if I had a hard commitment of teaching or something like that. I just didn't say no because I would like to have some free time, or I'd like to do homework. That would have been good to do. I would have been a little less stressed and probably gotten a little more done with my life. Now, it's always hard to say now. I found this question pretty difficult. I think I spent 5 minutes, 10 minutes thinking about it. But here's what I came up with. I read every single email or Facebook notification I get. This is probably a bad idea because the majority of them are irrelevant. The main issue is I don't know how to distinguish the ones that are irrelevant from the ones that are. There's a good heuristic, but every once in a while there will be an email that I initially thought would be irrelevant, but turned out to be relevant. So I'm still working out how to do that, but that's my answers. Okay, your turn. All right, you've got these written down on your laptop, phone, paper, right? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. What do I know? But yeah, so any answers that were not some rehashing of the ones up here? Anyone? Yeah. Reddit. Reddit and internet browsing in general. Yeah, that's a pretty common one. Will you actually stop doing Reddit?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah. Any others? Yeah?
I just feel like it's more about moderation in general. So
Mhm.
I just felt like it's not necessarily about quitting something
Yeah.
altogether, but just like managing it a little better.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I feel like the same thing for Reddit, because if you say you would have to give it up, then you probably say no, but there's maybe ways to do it that are more efficient.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I shouldn't have implied that I meant giving it up entirely. I did, in my head, mean just reducing it, but I definitely did not say that. But like, yeah, I'm definitely not going to stop parties and other social commitments. I was just saying there also that I should have reduced it. Others? You know what? That was 2 examples. I'm happy with 2 examples. All right. So that was the first piece of advice. Build career capital, get skills early on. The second piece of advice is explore to find a good fit. I'll let you admire this picture. It has nothing to do with careers, but it does have something to do with exploring. Yeah. And so the idea here is, it's like what I said earlier. Like, you can't expect to just sort of magically find a good career just by like no matter how much research you do, until you actually go and do the career, you probably won't know whether or not it's a good fit for you. You might have some idea, but it's always worth remembering that maybe it turns out you hate your colleagues, or maybe it turns out that the work isn't great. Often it's sort of like, make a list of your interests and your priorities in a job, then look at sort of all the jobs that are there and rank them according to your interests and priorities, and then choose the top one. Which, at its extreme, it's like a watered down version of follow your passion. And 80,000 Hours very emphatically says, no, this is a bad idea. And they like constantly send out links to me like saying, send this article out to people about not following their passion. I don't know about constantly. They've done it a few times. And basically the reason is, there's more to fit than passion for a cause. You also have to find the work engaging. You need to like your colleagues, all those other 6 factors that we talked about before. The other thing is passion for a cause can be developed. Like, by working in the cause, you can become passionate about it. So just because you see other people working in fields that they are passionate about doesn't mean that you should follow your passion. It could just be that they started working in that field, and then by working in that field, they became passionate about it because it was such a big part of their lives. Right? Also, psychology research has shown that we're just horrible, basically, at figuring out our future reactions at possible events. It's like, you may think that you will enjoy your career, and then when you actually do it, it's actually not a lot of fun. And this has been shown in all sorts of contexts that I forget, but it's, I think, pretty proven psychology. And like, if you don't experiment now, you could sort of waste years in a dead-end job. Now is the easiest time that you can experiment, especially in undergrad. You can go get internships, you could work at a research lab, all this sort of stuff. Okay, and similarly, you want to keep updating your career plan. So 80,000 Hours recommends like once every year at the very minimum, possibly more, you should look at your career plan in depth and revise it based on the events of the past year or however long it's been. And they recommend the Plan A, B, Z framework. There it is. And here, Plan A is basically the top option that you want to pursue. It's your Plan A. Plan B is sort of like if Plan A goes a bit wrong and for some reason you can't do it, that's the one you want to do. Plan Z is sort of the fail-safe backup. If everything goes horribly, catastrophically wrong, then you would go to Plan Z. It's generally a temporary thing because you don't expect things to go catastrophically wrong. And also probably it's not something you'd enjoy that much, but like would cover you for a while. Okay, so discussion. How can you test your options? So I've done this a few times. I should mention, I only discovered 80,000 hours like a year-ish ago, a little over a year ago. So when I have all these my answers here, they were not influenced by 80,000 hours. This is just sort of retrospectively looking at my life and seeing how it conformed to 80,000 hours framework. But I really wish I had seen 80,000 hours earlier. I would have made decisions better and faster. So I worked in industry. I took an internship at Google to see whether or not I would enjoy being a programmer in industry. I'm a CS major. And it turns out that actually it was okay. I wouldn't say I definitely didn't hate it. I did like the experience, but it wasn't like all that thrilling. It wasn't that challenging. And because of that, I decided to go to grad school, which was a way to test whether or not I wanted to become a professor or a researcher. Right? So I'm in grad school. I'm treating it mostly as a test for this career path, professorship or researcher. And I've been in grad school for almost 2 years now, and it's looking good. I really like it. So I'll finish the entire 5 years, or however long it takes. And I'll evaluate again once I get closer to the end of my degree. But this actually was the primary reason for me going to grad school. Then another thing is I'm pretty interested in animal activism. I think that's one of the best ways to help the world right now. So I've become a vegan because of that. I'm not sure whether or not I want to become an activist. And to sort of test those waters, I'm trying to go to events and protests run by Direct Action Everywhere, or DXE. Their activism, I don't know if it's cut out for me. It's scary. But I'm going to try it some more, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, all right, your turn. And get your paper, phone, laptop out. OK, the third piece of advice is find an approach that can affect a lot of people. And so there are 4 main ways to do this. Oh, sorry. First, I'll talk about the most popular altruistic careers. They're classroom teacher, social worker, doctor, and service charities. And the thing that they all have in common is they're sort of direct work. You can see the people who you're helping, and you can see the smile on their face when they when you help them, when you teach them, or you save their life if you're a doctor. And it's very gratifying. But at the same time, it doesn't scale up to many, many people. And so here are 4 ways that you could scale up to lots and lots of people. The first one is research and entrepreneurship. How many of you know these 2 guys? Oh, not that many. All right. This is Larry Page and Sergey Brin, founders of Google. And I honestly, it's kind of hard to overstate the impact that Google has had on the world. I just can't imagine a world without it. Programming would be incredibly difficult. It's just horrifying. But yeah, so when they were PhDs, they came up with this algorithm for searching with the web, and they dropped out of grad school and made a company, became Google, and we now have this multi-billion-dollar company that has really optimized web search and changed the lives of billions of people probably. And you just can't get that sort of impact elsewhere. It's and so that's on the entrepreneurship side. Research is similar. Imagine that you were the researcher who came up with the cure to malaria. That would be pretty incredible. You'd be saving millions of lives, possibly, maybe not billions, but millions of lives, which is huge, huge impact. And that's on, well, yeah. So you could save millions of lives. I'll stop there. And if this is what you want to do, you could start a business that targets people who are living under $2 a day. So a good example of this is a company called Wave, or SendWave, I believe is the full name. And what they do is they provide lower cost, I think they're called remittances. Basically, people who are working in America who want to send money back to Africa to support their families there. Typical banks charge on the order of like 7% for a transaction. Wave does it for much less. I believe it's 3%. Don't quote me on that. But this is actually saving, I believe, billions of dollars for some of the worst off people, the people who are worst off, because these are some of the poorest people in the world. And so they're having a huge impact by that, and they're a for-profit company. On the research side, you could do biomedical research. Get that cure for malaria. Make AMF completely obsolete. That would be great. We'd have to find a new charity to give to, but totally worth it. Obviously. Right? And so if this is the path you want to go down, the next steps would be programming or product engineering. So product engineering sort of helps you start a business and do that successfully. And of course, getting a PhD in biology would help for the biomedical research. All right. So the second way to affect a lot of people is get rich, give it all away. How many people recognize the two people on the right? Oh, more people. Nice. So that's Bill and Melinda Gates. And they have started the Gates Foundation, which is going to give away billions of dollars over their lifetime. The person on the left, I believe, is Chetan Bhagat, an Indian author. The reason I chose this picture was not because of Chetan Bhagat, although he is a great author, but it's because of the Gates Foundation's logo. Gates Foundation's logo is visible there. All lives have equal value, right? And they estimate that they can save a life for about every $1,000 that they donate or use. They don't donate at all. And given that they're giving away billions of dollars, that's again like potentially millions of lives saved, right? So probably you are not going to be Bill Gates. That seems unreasonable to expect. But you could still have a pretty big impact this way. It's a lot easier to get rich than to do like fundamental research or creates a like highly successful business that affects people who are not so well off. Right? So if that's what you want to do, you could start a business with huge growth potential. In fact, this is one of my sort of strongest career options that I'm considering. You could do professional services that pay a lot, so programming, law, finance, these all pay a huge amount, and if you donate a large chunk of it, you could do a lot of good with that. If that's what you want to do, the next steps, I mean, there's been a lot of, there's a lot of advice on how you could get rich. So like you could go into CS or math or engineering, especially CS. At least, I've had offers from companies, and it's frightening how much they will pay a graduate from a CS program. And finance is like even higher. It's scary. And one nice thing about CS is, depending on your beliefs, but I believe that working at a CS job is net positive for the world. I don't know about finance. Everybody else seems to think it's bad. I'm not taking a stand on there, but like I think with CS there's a strong case to be made that it's net positive for the world, even apart from your donations. Right? And you could start a small business either for the learning value, or maybe that business just grows and you earn a ton of money from the business. Right. Let me pause there because this is a pretty long section and see if there are any questions.
Why is it?
It's definitely not that. They have looked into it. I know that. I don't know exactly why they don't recommend it. My guess would be some combination of it being maybe too hard, and maybe it's just not very likely that you'd have an impact. They have written a few articles about, so like one of them is called Effective Altruists Love Systemic Change. And it's all about how effective altruism actually does support policy work. There are some caveats there. Rachel talked about, earlier Rachel talked about sort of how hard it can be to do policy, but also how to do it right. They've also like looked into they've done like articles about how likely is it that you could become the prime minister of Britain if you wanted to. They chose Britain because that's where they're based. So they're definitely considering it. I don't know exactly why they don't recommend it. Yes.
This was a while ago, like almost 2 years now, but I remember seeing they had a table that was like ranking some of the best jobs that they looked into, and UK party politics was in the top tier of like
Oh.
with starting with entrepreneurship
And programming, I believe.
high risk, but extremely high return.
Oh, okay. So they do recommend policy then.
Yeah, it might
Yeah.
be that they haven't done much with it since
Yeah.
then, but
I mean, that's actually going to be one of the next points on the slide. It might even be the next one. So they definitely do encourage it. But I believe they do put other things above it on their website. But it is encouraged. It's possibly my next slide or 3 slides from now. I forget which order they're in. Yeah.
I was going to say it seems like or maybe you're about to talk about it, but another big area would be environmental work because I would consider climate change to be the defining challenge of our era.
Yep.
If you look at the amount of harm that sea level rise could do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So
if by keeping say a ton of carbon out of the atmosphere, you can help a lot of people just don't know that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess it's not under this particular point of advice, but it could be. Ideas like that fall under another piece of advice that I'll come to, which is like find a pressing problem to solve. And I would also maybe also group it under the policy section of it. But yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. Right. So I think a lot of the options that 80,000 hours gives are explicitly high risk, high return, in that it's not guaranteed and maybe not even that likely that you'll succeed, but if you succeed, it would be incredible. It's like researching a cure for malaria is one of those. They also do recommend some things which are more sort of guaranteed good and a lot of it. So like one of them was earning to give. If you major in CS and get a high-paying CS job, that's a pretty surefire way to do a ton of good in the world. So they have a mix of them. I believe they look mostly at the expected value, which is you sort of take the probability of your impact and you multiply it by how great it would be if you succeeded, and that's sort of your expected impact on the world, and then they rank them by that. But if you personally don't want to have a very high-risk thing, you can also choose some of these other low-risk options. Right. Any more questions? Yeah.
I just had a question, which was that even though CS I'm good at, or to what extent?
You want to do something that you are decent at least. So I think my guess at what their response would be to try out CS and math. The explore to find a good fit part of this really matters. But if you find that you don't enjoy it, or you wouldn't be enthusiastic about it, or you wouldn't be good at it, then don't do it. Like personal fit is important. And so most of these are sort of, like if you look at these options, a lot of them are semi-generic. Like they're not fully generic, they won't apply everywhere. But like research and entrepreneurship is a pretty wide sort of set of options that you could have. And most majors could do some sort of research or entrepreneurship. It's not limited to specific majors. So they do tend to have a bit of more recommendations on STEM, like STEM fields, economics, and things like that. But this is all sort of limited by, make sure that you would be enthusiastic about it, would not, hate your job if you did it. Yeah.
One of your earlier slides mentioned marketing as a very like.
That's another one. Yeah, that's a specific skill that would be good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. That's a good point. All right, I'll move on, and we can have another Q&A session later. Okay. So yes, advocacy. So this is Dylan Matthews from Vox. I didn't expect any of you to recognize him. But he writes articles for Vox and previously for Wonkblog that are read by many, many, many viewers, right? So like his average article will reach 30,000 readers, and some of his most read ones get millions of viewers, right? And so he's having a huge impact by sort of convincing people to be on his side of the issue, which hopefully is the right side. But by affecting the views of many, many people, he's having a huge impact that way. Right? So that's another way to affect a lot of people. And if that's what you want to do, you could get into politics, policy, journalism, academia, arts. And really, the next thing to do would be just develop public speaking and writing skills. Right? And this sort of ties into the policy question that we had earlier. And the final way is influencing big institutions. And this is Jason Matheny. He is the director of EARPA. And let's see, EARPA stands for the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agenda. It's activity, thank you. Last day, got the first four right. And what they do, they're a government organization that basically controls tons of money, millions, if not billions, I think billions of dollars that goes towards research into sort of things that the nation would want, essentially. But he was initially a program manager at EARPA and has now become a director. And even as a program manager, he was managing huge amounts of money, deciding what research would get done, which grants to award. And so essentially, he got to choose what research happened in the world. And so by prioritizing that well, he could have had a huge impact. If he didn't prioritize the research that would only affect a few people, but instead gave money to the people who have cured malaria, that's a huge impact right there. Right? And he's doing this year after year, managing huge amounts of money. Right? And so if this is what you want to do, you could go into, again, party politics and policy development. And large organizations, so like foundations, so you could work at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example. And if that's what you want to do, you should probably study econ or applied policy and intern at think tanks or public service. OK, that was a very long, extended point. And to remind you what it was about, it was choose an attempt that scales up to many, many people. Right? And so we're finally back to a discussion. How can you scale whatever it is you think would be worthwhile for you to do? And here are the 4 areas that we talked about. All right, go. All right, any ideas? Either options that are not these 4, or how you could apply these 4 to your specific career or plan for a career? All of you said words in the last 3 minutes. Yeah.
We were saying that in addition to all these, education is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Both from childhood through higher education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you wouldn't necessarily know the impact you have on the people you're educating and the impact they'll have.
Yep, that's definitely true. Yeah, especially someone like Salman Khan, for example, educated so many people. Oh my God. Yeah.
Also, professors on that point, professor at Stanford, I'm sure has a big contribution to the world overall based on how many.
Yeah, I think especially professors at universities are really influencing students quite a lot and influencing them in pretty relevant ways to their careers. Yeah. Any others? Yeah.
Urban policy, I think, is a big one for me. That's kind of where I would like my career to go. And so if you can change even one, for instance, efficiency policy in New York City, then that's going to have ripple effects for years and decades to come.
Right. So this would go under the
The last
either advocacy or influence big institutions, one of those two. There's overlap quite a bit. All right. Okay, so we're at the fourth piece of advice. As a reminder, the first three were, what was the first one? Don't follow, ish, yes. Don't follow your passion, but like, also, like, if you, just don't back yourself into a dead-end job because you think that's your passion. Like, explore it, definitely, but like, don't get stuck in it until you know that you enjoy it. But actually, that was the second one. That was explore to find a good fit. The first one was build career capital. There might have been a don't follow your passion in there too, though. Yeah, 80,000 hours like saying that a lot, at least. But it's more nuanced. It's like, follow your passion, sure, but don't commit to it for the rest of your life. Make sure you have an escape hatch. Make sure you're still exploring. So yeah, first one, career capital. Second one, explore. And the third one is choose an approach that scales and affects many people. Right? Now we're at the fourth one, which is choose a pressing problem to solve. All right? And you've heard a lot about this already. But so let's talk about, to be a little different from the other talks, sort of how you got interested in, whichever cause you're most interested right now. Was it sort of like friends, personal connection, existing passion, no particular reason, principled approach like the ITN framework that was introduced, importance, tractable, neglected? How did you choose whatever cause you're interested in? Go. And so you've heard about this many times by now, probably, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. The ITN framework, importance, tractability, neglectedness. Right? That's the standard sort of EA framework of how you evaluate causes, how you compare causes. And when you're considering career, it's incredibly important to also think about personal fit. Like going back to a question that was asked earlier, if you hate CS, you hate math, it's probably not a good idea to go into programming or finance. It's still important that you enjoy your job and you like going there. Because that's what you should look for in a job. Like effective altruism doesn't say you should be completely unhappy. Like one of our organizations is called Giving What We Can, not Giving All We Have. So that's point number one. Like you just should not be unhappy. That is not a thing that EA wants, or that is not a thing that we want to tell you, rather. And second thing is, if you don't enjoy your job, you're probably not going to have a huge impact. Like, you're not going to be motivated to get up in the morning, to go to work, and to do these things that could help a bunch of people. It's like, even if it's ostensibly the best thing you can do, I would bet chances are you don't actually accomplish much if you don't enjoy your job. Yeah. Okay. How much time do I have? I have 18 minutes. All right, I'm going to skip this discussion. All right, so advice, point number 5. Find an effective, cheap intervention. And this is to some extent a little more specific advice because you can't always do this, but if you can, that's definitely something you should do, right? And Ajaya, Anjali, they've all talked about why this is sort of important. And this cute graph over here, which is showing the cost effectiveness of various interventions for increasing the number of days that teachers come to teach at schools. And I love this graph because this bar is infinitely cost effective, which is great. And the way that they got this was they basically said, hey teachers, we're not going to pay you if you don't come to school. And that has resulted in them coming to school a lot more. And also it saved people money. So like you got more money and had a great impact. So it's like, yeah, they're just perfectly cost effective. But yes, cute graph. That's true, actually. You could also call it negative cost effectiveness. But then you'd have like a bar going down and that would look bad. Infinity, it'll just look so much nicer. Okay. Anyway, so here's a great quote from the Coalition for Evidence-Based Policy that sort of explains why this is so important, and specifically why evidence is important. Right? So the vast majority of social programs and services have not yet been rigorously evaluated, and of those that have been rigorously evaluated, most, perhaps 75% or more, including those backed by expert opinion and less rigorous studies, turn out to produce small or no effects, and in some cases, negative effects. Right? It's kind of horrifying, actually. It's like you make a guess as to how to improve the world, and you know what? You might be wrong. You might just be harming the world. You might just be making things worse. Right? It's pretty, like, I don't know. You could find this disheartening, and I do find it a bit disheartening, but also, like, with the sort of rigorous studies, you can tell what works, right? So it's kind of interesting. 80,000 Hours has come up with a quiz where they give you 10 possible interventions, and they ask you to guess whether it would be, whether it has a positive effect, no effect, or a negative effect. I took this quiz, and so randomly you'd expect to get a third of them right, since there are 3 options, 33%. So I took this quiz, I got 4 out of 10 right. So I was like, basically random. Basically a random guesser would have been just as good as me. And this is apparently the norm. It's just, you can't really do much better than guessing at random. And so that's why we need evidence. And there's one exception to this. We don't only want to sort of do interventions and programs that we've proven to work, because we also need to have new programs to prove that they work. And if we just only do the ones that are proven to work, we'll never have anything new, anything innovative. We might be missing out on better things that are yet to come. Right? So innovation is also valuable. But if you are going to go for innovation, you want to go for the higher probability of proving success. Right? So you don't want to just innovate where once you've done your innovation, you can't tell whether or not you've succeeded. Right? So if you want to go for innovation, make sure that it's something that could potentially be evaluated in the future so that you actually know that what you're doing is working. The final piece of advice is spread the word. And basically the idea here is that you can have a multiplier effect. So consider me. I'm an effective altruist. I could maybe over my lifetime, if I was really good, I could donate $1 million to AMF and save 1,000 lives. I'm just pulling these numbers out of the air right now. But if I convince all of you to be effective altruists, and you wouldn't have been effective altruists before, and each of you donates, let's say even only $500,000, then because there's so many more of you, I've just multiplied my impact humongously, right? And yeah, to answer your guys' questions, I was talking about over your lifetime as opposed to this year. And even so, I've still just pulled the numbers out of thin air, right? So that's the idea. Many people think that I shouldn't just sort of brag about my donations, how I'm a morally superior person or something like that to the world. And I agree with this. I feel that sort of twinge of embarrassment every time I make a public post on Facebook about this, or if I publish my donations on Giving What We Can or things like that. I feel the embarrassment, but I do it anyway, just because this is also a good way to do good. If we make it more normal for people to think about doing good, how to do the most good, then more good will probably be done. Right? So that's another way to do more good. And here's an example. So Ravi Patel at, I always forget if it's Cambridge. It's Cambridge, okay, it's not Oxford. He took the Giving What We Can pledge, which is a pledge to give 10% of your income to donate 10% of your income to effective organizations. But he didn't just stop at taking the pledge. He also made it go viral, essentially. And it became so viral, so many people took the pledge that he actually got a newspaper article written about him. right? And that sort of impact, just that one thing, is probably more than any direct impact that he could have had over his lifetime even, right? Like, just look at that line of people, and that's only the ones who are geographically next to, like, close to him. Like, he influenced people all over the world. It's crazy. Yeah. Okay. I've talked a lot. So there's also the website. The website has more concrete information about all of this. I'm approaching the end of my talk, finally. Man, so much talking. It's got career reviews, so you can like choose a specific career, and if 80,000 Hours has investigated it, they'll have produced an article about it, and you can look specifically at what they have to say about it. A career recommender, so it basically asks you a bunch of questions and then has some recommendations for what you might want to look into based on that. It's very, very sort of preliminary. Like, in no way should you take that as gold. In fact, you'll look at it and probably say, that's just stupid. But it's a good way to figure out what you might want to explore. Like, even if you say that's just stupid to like one or two of the options, maybe there are some other options that you hadn't thought of before. They've got an analysis of various causes. They come out with articles pretty often about that. Yeah, and so that's the website. You should definitely go on there and check it out. And so as a review of the talk, here are the 6 pieces of advice. Firstly, develop career capital. Secondly, explore your options. Thirdly, pick a strategy that will scale up to many, many people. Fourth, choose the most pressing cause area. Like, choose a pressing problem to solve. Fifth, select the most effective and cheap intervention. Sixth, spread the word. All right? And so those are the takeaways, at least the 6 pieces of advice that 80,000 Hours has to give. And now I want you guys to talk about the takeaways. All right, we're done. Talk's over. We still have 10 minutes because I really wanted to do this discussion, which is just, what did you get out of this talk? All right, talk to your neighbor. Go. All right, so I have one final question, which is, do you have something actionable, something you could start doing in the next week, maybe month, but ideally next week, that you've gotten out from this talk? How many people think they have something like that? Actually, it's quite a few. But I want you to just take like a minute or two in silence and think about something actionable. For those of you who have one more thing that's actionable that you could do starting the next week, based on ideas from this talk. I kind of wanted to ask for some examples, but I don't have much time left. So I'm going to use the last 3 minutes that I have for another Q&A session. So any questions? Yeah.
So, like, the theme of this has been, like, do not just follow your passion. Like, what is the difference between your passion versus your cause?
So the way I've been using the word cause here, I've been thinking of it more as something that you discover from ways outside of passion. So specifically, we looked at the ITN framework, important, tractable, and neglected. And Ajaya introduced it in her intro talk in the morning, but you can ask me about it later, and I can go over it again. And so when I use the word cause here, it's more something that was chosen by, I don't want to say rational thought, but like it wasn't something that you just emotionally felt attached to. Whereas that's what I mean by passion. It's really, you emotionally want to do this. This is the thing that you want to do with your life. And it's good to have passion, but it's not good to choose a career solely based off of passion and like not leave yourself any exit routes. And not consider the other 6 aspects that were the other 6 factors that lead to job satisfaction, or other 5. Yeah.
In the building career capital, what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked out on that because I don't know. And that is the reason I glossed over it in that slide. Like, I saw this definition in the 80,000 Hours talk, and I figured I probably shouldn't remove that word. but I wouldn't know what to say if anyone asked me about it. They have more details on their website. I'm just not comfortable saying it because I will probably ruin their explanation. So sorry about that. Yeah?
You said the bill.
So A is we don't know, in that the Gates Foundation is not transparent about what it does or how it works. So this is just them saying that they save a life for every $1,000 or so. I think it was on like Bill Gates AMA on Reddit. So first answer, we don't know. Second answer is they sort of have the benefit of being able to direct large amounts of money however they see fit. And so they've done things like fund vaccine development. And because they have so much money at their disposal, that's like a thing that they can reasonably surely find new vaccines. And that's not something your average individual donor can do. Like, you just can't support research on of that scale and be guaranteed to sort of get successes. So that's one thing that they do. That's my hypothesis based on educated guessing. Really no evidence, honestly.
So this talk is wrapping up just about now. If there's one quick question, you can take that. Otherwise, we're heading over for the closing ceremony, and we'll have feedback forms for you guys. You could grab more food from here or the other room.
All right, last question. Yes?
So you said you're involved with DXC. Do you think that is the most effective way of convincing people to go vegan, or do you think?
I honestly have no idea. I think, so DXC's, let's take this offline since it's not that relevant to the talk, but I'll talk to you afterwards.